Alright everybody, welcome. Today we're going to do a quick video here on how to take down an Airsoft 1911 gas blowback. This particular model is a WeTac 1911 Tactical. The requested model was a Bell 1911. Unfortunately I do not have that one available at the moment to take down, but the takedowns are extremely similar, and I'm going to point out the differences where I see them. This takedown is, for all intents and purposes, for painting, for customizing, for removing and replacing internal parts. So nearly every internal part, piece, screw is going to be taken out and completely cleared. We'll have a piece of metal frame, slide, and a piece of metal frame when we're done, and all the parts will be out. So first things first, what you're going to need: your gun, obviously, a flathead screwdriver about the size to take off these grip screws, a smaller flathead screwdriver if you have a nut in your top safety, or a screw in your top safety here to take that out. Top sight, I apologize. A small Phillips head screwdriver for poking out pins, as well as some small Phillips screws. Small flathead for some internal flathead screws. A T10 Torx bit for what it consists is an Allen key nut in here somewhere, but I prefer to use the Torx key just because it's a little easier to work with, and it's the same size. So a T10 or a T10 equivalent Allen key. Also a bushing wrench, should you need the bushing wrench, if you have a full-length guide rod, as I do. First thing we're going to do, always make sure we're unloaded. Magazine is out, no rounds in it. Slide is cocked back. We've got nobody in the chamber there. Not that it matters with gas blowback, since the propulsion unit is your magazine. Hammer down. What we're first going to do is field strip it. Bring our takedown notch here to the end of the release lever. Poke out. Remove. Now we have two halves. We're going to first start at the slide. I have a full-length guide rod, as some people can see here. So I need to remove this. This isn't something you're going to need to do. You should just have a stubby rod here with the spring. It just pulls out. Don't worry about it. It's not difficult. Alright. Bushing gets cocked to the side and pulls out straight. Out comes my rod. Now the barrel should slide straight forward and out. For those doing an inner barrel upgrade. Ooh, okay, here we are. You're going to need to take this black piece, which is held on by a small Phillips screw here, remove it. These two halves will slide apart. You'll have to take apart the hop-up bucking and install your inner barrel. Back to the slide. Since I have a top sight here with a regular notch, we're going to take her out. And that should be removed. Now you take your Torx or your Allen to your nut back here, and carefully remove that. Top sight, blowback unit, which we can set aside. If you want me to go into detail on that later, I can. There's nothing small moving in there. The only issue is there's a top spring along the rail here. Now you basically just have a piece of metal slide. You can sand, paint, chrome, whatever you're going to do with it. For time issues, we're going to move along. Bottom grip, remove your grip screws. Doesn't matter which side, I'm OCD, so I always start on this side. Try and move this along for time's sake. Okay. Now on the bell, you're going to have a difference here. With your safety, there's this tube unit here with two plungers and a spring. When you take the bell apart, and this is an easier thing on the bell, there's going to be a U-shaped piece here connected to this tube. The tube is not connected to the gun on the bell. That piece just lifts out and you can set it aside. No issues there whatsoever. Nothing difficult. Unlike what I'm going to show you here in a second with mine. Other side. keep in mind during this whole process that silicone lube, mostly during the reassembly, can be used a lot to help improve the general tune-up of your gun, basically. So, like I said, during reassembly, which I will make a video for, just keep in mind that silicone lube can be sprayed sparingly here or there. Now that we're down to the frame, make sure your hammer's cocked back. I'm going to lift the safety. Then with the beaver tail pointing down, we're going to slightly pull off the left side safety with this tube here. Be careful, there's pieces falling out here that are spring-loaded and small. So that's why I'm doing this on a mat and slowly so I can see everything I'm doing. You will get one small piece like this, skinny all the way down, fat at one end. A small piece like this, fat mostly except for a small tip at the end. And a small spring. Put those aside. I'll tell you about the order they go back in, unless you can't figure it out by them falling out during the reassembly. Move your other side safety. Now, holding the gun upside down and applying pressure here on the mainspring housing. Look, you can see mine's already falling out, but there's a divot on one side here. Take a screwdriver and push it through. That may happen if you're spring-loaded. Don't worry about it. That falls out, that's the beaver tail. Your mainspring housing slides out. This is your leaf spring, which just comes right out. Now we're looking at this unit here. I'm sorry. This unit here. There's a chunk of metal that comes out here. This is the trigger assembly. Just a Phillips head screw here, which we will remove. Now, for those of you who got antsy and just jumped ahead and realized as your gun exploded, do not take this next screw right here. It's a flathead. Do not take it out fully at all. We're going to slightly loosen it till the head comes just up above the surface of the metal here, and then slide it off. Now, as we look at this, there's a spring in here. Our gas plunger, our spring is slightly falling off. Try not to let that spring fall off. It's very difficult to put back in. At least it was for me to figure out. Just hold your thumb on the back to where that spring is. Make sure it's set in there nicely and tighten that screw back down just so everything holds in place. Now we're going to be looking at the hammer here, which just slides off its post. Take a look at how the sear and disconnect bar sit in there. Sear should sit in there something like this, and it's a little hole, and the disconnect bar here sits in like this, and there's a notch in the top the tip goes through. Now as we flip the gun over, take our small flathead again, insert here, push and rotate counterclockwise, push the release button from the other side, and allow the magazine release to fall out. Pull the trigger back, grab onto the bar, your trigger comes out. Now, what we have left is just a solid metal frame of a 1911. Now, my recommendation is, if you're painting or sanding down or doing anything, these are the two pieces that you focus on. Followed next by, depending on how you do things, the beaver tail, the mainspring housing. If you're using a Wii, this item here, this is the trigger assembly. And it sits in, obviously where you saw it come out, it sits in here. So that's part of the metal frame. For those of you doing a bell, that trigger assembly does not come out, that's not there. There's a, you'll have your outer frame on your bell. There'll be a screw in here, right up the tip here, and two body pins back here. These are the safeties. Those pop out, and there's this whole middle trigger assembly that comes right out. And then you can do your magazine release and trigger. If I can get my hands back on my bell, I'll do that for you guys. But otherwise, for those of you who don't want to watch another video, the reassembly is basically the exact opposite of disassembly. There's a few little quirks I'll point out, but otherwise, that should be it, guys. Hope you enjoyed.